What's up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I'm here with a review for Son of Batman, which is the latest animated, movie from Warner Brothers Animation in DC Comics. I heard about this a while back, and I was actually surprised that they made this because I was expecting the next film to be the Aquaman standalone film. I think it's like Atlantis Attacks or some shit like that. I don't remember what the name of it is. I just know they kept saying that after Justice League War, we would get Aquaman. I guess it's coming down the line. But anyway, we got Son of Batman. And it's kind of a strange beast, so to say, so to speak. There are aspects of it that that work, and then there are aspects that, in my opinion, don't work. The majority of it does not work. That's my big problem with it. There's a lot of, God, how do I put this without, completely sounding like a pure hater? There's a lot of, people talk about suspension of belief, right? Of disbelief, I mean. It's a comic. You shouldn't, don't be too logical when you watch these things. Just watch and enjoy, and don't analyze super hard. But there's a thing about Damien that insults my intelligence as a writer, as a comic book fan, as an artist, and just as as an adult. He's 10 years old, and I'm also a martial artist. This is the thing. I've trained with people of all different ages, and some of them were kids. None of the 10-year-olds, none of them could beat, the adults. None of them. I mean, you'd have to be one sorry, weak adult. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. You just, there's no way. And then we're watching this thing, and somehow, it's just, it insults my intelligence. It's the best way I could say it. It's just, it's annoying to see that this is what they think passes for, a good story. Like, oh, man. So, overall, the plot is really, really simple. It's a revenge story. The League of Assassins are attacked by a mysterious enemy. In this, the League of Assassins are all like ninja-like, and it was like they watched Ninja Assassin, because that's exactly what I felt when I was looking at the setup of that base and whatnot. And they're attacked by a mysterious enemy who uses, automatic weapons, and they're very military. And in this, the League of Assassins, instead of being assassins with like all the various skills, but like they go to the League for training in martial arts, these guys were just real primitive and old school. They all use really ancient weapons. They use swords, shuriken, arrows, that kind of stuff. They didn't use any guns, which was kind of strange because I've always seen Talia using a gun. I've always seen Raish with, a scimitar, because he chooses to have a scimitar. He chooses to meet his opponents head on in actual combat. But, even in Arkham City, there was like mysticism, and there was like all these little things, and some of the there were like those female assassins, remember, in Arkham City, that attack you with swords, and they disappear and they reappear and they do all this crazy stuff. Like, there's certain assassins, there's a type that runs around with that kind of weaponry, and then there's a type that uses guns and bombs and pistols and poisons and all that other stuff, and sniper rifles. And Talia, she's usually of the other version. You know what I'm saying? She's of the camp that poisons people or snipes people or shoots them. She's not necessarily of the, the camp that only will fight you. She doesn't really give a shit about the purity of combat. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, they're attacked. It turns out that this army is Deathstroke's army. Deathstroke in this story, and I'm like, really? This is what they did with him? In this story, Deathstroke was a former student of Ra's al Ghul, which is really weird. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, are you kidding me? So that's what you're gonna do with Deathstroke, like, you know. And if he learned under him, and I'm giving you my 2 cents as I give you the plot, because some of this story is just so poorly done that for someone like me who really doesn't give a shit about Damian, like, I was never a big fan of Damian. I always thought he was the weirdest Robin of all of them because, number one, he's the only one that they drew. Well, eventually, someone at editorial finally said, if he's 10 years old, he needs to look 10 years old, because there were issues of the original story done by Andy Kubert where he looked like a grown-ass man, and I'm like, wait, he's supposed to be 10 years old. What is wrong with people? Or like the DCUC figure, or signature collection figure that was released, where he looks like he's, you know, he's like 18 or 19 or something, but he's supposed to be a 10-year-old boy. He should be a stick. Tiny little dude. In this, they drew him as a kid. And they put him in situations that he just couldn't win. I understand, like, when you watch the old Teen Titans cartoon, Robin was fighting Deathstroke, but most of the time he was getting beaten by Deathstroke. And when he would win, most of the time that wasn't even Deathstroke, you know what I mean? So, like, their fights were cool, and it was exaggerated. So the Robin in that one, it was like, because he was trained by Batman, he was like a Street Fighter character, you know what I'm saying? This Robin, it's like, he hangs out with the League of Shadows. I get it. He likes to kill. But does that automatically put him on Batman's level? I mean, he in this movie, there's no difference between him as far as weight and power and strength and speed. There's no difference between a 10-year-old boy and an adult. They could be 100 and something pounds, or they could be like 300 pounds. There's like no difference. He just goes through everybody. And it's not like they gave him a weapon that made him that much better. They're just like, oh, he's Batman's son, so he's just Trill. he's got it like that because he's Batman's son. And to me, that's fucking whack. You know, like, in the Batman universe before now, when kids fought, kids did cool stuff, but like an adult with more intelligence and more experience could easily put them down and be like, okay, look, this is what has to happen. In the comics, several times Damian's got just knocked the fuck out, one hit immediately by a metahuman. In this movie, conveniently, Deathstroke is not metahuman. I mean, he's calling himself Deathstroke, so this is years after his time in the service and the whole super soldier program that he went through, and he has none of his powers. I mean, he gets stabbed in the eye by Damian. He gets his ass whooped by Damian at the end of the film. It's like they forgot again that, you know, he's a meta-human. This is the character, Deathstroke is a character that beats Batman on the regular. I mean, they've only fought a handful of times, but each time it's always been like, if Batman wins, he had to lose first and then use something to kind of interrupt the fight, and then he wins. Batman doesn't just outright outfight Slade Wilson. Slade Wilson is not a normal human being, and his powers and his skill set put him at odds with Batman. That's why they always put him against super-powered characters like the Teen Titans. So it's strange when you watch this and you see Damian just hand Deathstroke his ass. Like, there's no universe that I know of where that would happen. But in this one, this is how it happened. And it, you know, I watched Ryasuke's review, and a lot of what he said is kind of true. It feels like, with the absence of Bruce Timm, because, you know, he's done with all this stuff. He doesn't work for them anymore. He tends to work with them from time to time, like he did on the 75th anniversary shorts, Batman shorts. With the absence of Bruce Timm and the majority of his team, you have some nice animation, because the animation is being done overseas. You have okay designs, because, you know, these designs weren't horrible. Everyone looked pretty cool and they were on model. But your storyline just lacks the kind of polish and the kind of intelligence that a story under Bruce Timm and his team would have. It's as if the bar has been dropped now that he's gone. Like, he must have been a hell of a boss. You know, he must be beating the shit out of his, you know, like motivationally speaking, he must be beating the hell out of his co-workers to make sure that they get out the best product, period. You know, best product they can possibly make, because now, first Justice League War was like, you know, then this. It's like, so far, like, I think there's been 3 movies this year, and 2 of the 3 have been, I'm kind of, you know, like, that's not cool. But anyway, the League of Assassins is attacked by Deathstroke and his gang. Deathstroke is mad that Ra's al Ghul will not hand over the League to him someday. Instead, he's going to hand it over to Damian. So he's going to forcefully take it, and by take it, I mean he destroys the whole thing. So this is the level of intelligence that we're dealing with, as far as the level of complexity in this story. I want it. You won't give it to me, so I still want it, but I'm going to destroy it. And then after he's destroyed it, he runs around telling people he's in charge of the League of Assassins. But you killed all the assassins, and you destroyed the actual League headquarters. So what are you leading? You're still leading the same guys that you led into the destruction of the League of Assassins. So there's your first big plot hole. Anyway, Talia is there. She helps fight off Deathstroke. Deathstroke has a fight with Damian during the siege of the League of Assassins. And you would think, like, you always hear people speak of the League of Assassins as this badass underground group, and they're like the elite, you know what I mean? They're so good. Yet all you see is a bunch of these ninja guys just get killed like it's nothing. I mean, some of them dodge and some of them get a stab off or something, but then they get shot. It's as if the writers are saying, they've got that Call of Duty logic, you know? If I got a gun and you got a sword, no matter what your training is, bang, it's done. I mean, this is comics we're talking about. Ninjas don't act like regular people. And you had a whole island full of ninjas, and you lost to a bunch of guys with machine guns. Why didn't they just all disappear and fucking guerrilla the hell out of everybody? Guerrilla, you know, warfare is like the trade for ninjas. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to continue going into that. Back to the fight at the siege. Damian takes Deathstroke's eye. Deathstroke and company beat Ra's al Ghul, and they set him on fire. What happens is they're fighting in a corridor, and Ra's is like blocking bullets and stuff with his sword, you know, which was pretty badass. I actually like that. Because, you know, you always hear about how badass Ra's al Ghul was. And the first time I ever got to see him be a badass was in Arkham City. That was my favorite boss fight in the game, was fighting Ra's al Ghul, because he was, I mean, there was magic involved, and then he was actually fighting you, and he was on your level. But anyway, they're fighting him, and then all of a sudden all the ninjas vanish, and you hear a missile coming towards that room, and it's like Ra's couldn't do anything. So there's a huge explosion. Ra's comes flying out of the room, falls to what would be a normal man's death, but because he's Ra's al Ghul, he survives the fall. It looked like he was dead, but he survives the fall, starts dragging himself to the Lazarus pit. He doesn't make it to the Lazarus pit, and then he dies. I was like, huh? And then they say, oh, we can't throw him in because he's already been dead. The Lazarus pit does not bring dead people back to life. This is the next hole in the fucking movie. Jason Todd was brought from a whole nother fucking country to the Lazarus pits in the League of Assassins headquarters, wherever they are. I mean, are they in like Nanda Parbat or something like that? I can't remember where it was around the time of Death in the Family. So anyway, they flew this kid's body to the freaking League of Assassins headquarters, and it brought him back to life. Matter of fact, we've seen Ra's al Ghul get killed multiple times and then dumped into the freaking Lazarus pit, and he comes back to life. Shit, we saw it more than a few times in the animated series. But anyway, in this movie, that doesn't work. So Ra's al Ghul is dead, just moments, like an inch or two away from the Lazarus pit. So Damian's like, you know, I can bring him back to life if I put him in the thing. I'm like, yeah, you got the right idea, kid. But the writer said nope. So, you know, it's just one of those things where if you know Batman and you're you know, watching all this stuff and you're reading and you're understanding what's going on, and I don't know how else to put it. If you're a fan of Batman, if you're aware of him and you've known a little something about him for quite some time, then you'll realize that, oh man, it's just not, it doesn't work. A lot of the story just does not work. I mean, and it's kind of embarrassing in a way, because usually Bruce Timm and his team would trim the fat, you know, or anyone from his team would trim the fat from the original story, so that you wouldn't be like wondering, you know, how does this work? Why did this happen like this? And this story is one of those key examples of why I'm not a big fan of Grant Morrison, because there's too many things that you have to pretend like you don't know in order to allow for this plot to work. I mean, I've already stopped how many times, and this is the prologue of the story that I'm telling you about. We haven't even got to Batman. We haven't even got to Talia taking her and Bat's son to Gotham to tell Batman, you know, hey, guess what? This is your son. So anyway, I'll get to that. I'll try my hardest to get through the real story and then, you know, bitch about it afterwards. Talia grabs Damian and is like, we have to go. She takes him, they leave, they head for Gotham. She's like, it's time for you to meet your father. Roll intro, which was kind of not really that awesome at all. It was very boring. They go to Gotham, or we cut to Gotham. Batman is pretty much, he's been hunting down Croc, who's stealing drugs, which they straight ripped from Hush, where he was stealing these mutative drugs to make him bigger and, you know, kind of scarier and shit. And he's getting in a little tussle with, you know, Croc. He's getting his ass whooped. I don't know what it is about this new 52 Batman and not being really capable. You know, he gets his ass whooped by him, and then Talia shocks the shit out of Croc. I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, which is something that Batman himself would have done, but, you know, whatever. So the two of them show up they move to her yacht. She's dressed all nice and sexy and whatnot, and she's trying to come on to Batman. And then she explains that her father was killed, and Batman says exactly what we're all thinking. You don't seem really sad about it. She just wants to hump. It's like, really, Talia? Your dad just died. Like, your dad, the guy who you fight everything, you do everything for. In this, none of that was present. So she advances on Batman multiple times. She tries to get the draws, tries to get him to drop the bat suit and give him the bat dack, some bat dack, and he's like, no, something else is going on, you know, what's going on? And finally she's like, okay, meet your son. I was like, what kind of conversation is this? This is how people talk? Oh yeah, give me the dack, and he's like, nah, I don't feel like giving you the dack. All right, well, here's your son. What? Anyway, son comes out and he's like, you don't look that intimidating. I thought you'd be taller. What? Really? Nobody slapped the little kid. Nobody said anything to him. And pretty much she's like, this is your kid. And he's like, are you sure? She's like, yeah. And Batman doesn't question it. He's like, oh, yeah, I guess it's my kid. Then she leaves. And then the kid's standing next to him. And they're just watching the boat go off. And I'm like, wow, that's it. You'd think something like this would be kind of a big deal. Much like my complaint with Hasbro and the 50th anniversary of G.I. Joe. Here's Batman. He's like the most paranoid, most like surgical of superheroes. And then somehow he managed to skeet the wrong place. Well, technically it's the right place, but knowing who he is, he happened to, you know, in the wrong place and end up with a kid, and he was not aware of it. Just like this same Batman. And it's weird too, because this is not a New 52 story, now that I think about it. This is actually a pre-New 52 story. But somehow they put it into the New 52 framework because that's the version of Batman that's in this film. Or very close to New 52 Batman. I say it's the New 52 Batman because it's still Jason O'Mara, and he was the voice for Batman in War. And I think from this point on, he's going to be the voice of Batman and all the New 52 related stuff. So Batman is just like, yeah, I got a kid. So he calls Alfred, says, you know, make up a room. We're going, you know, home. The kid immediately says he knows how to drive. So let him drive the Batmobile. I'm like, you... Anyway, they drive the Batmobile home. He meets Alfred. He's a complete dick to Alfred, and I understand Damian is a dick. He's a dick to Alfred. He makes fun of the Batcave a little bit, or he has snarky comments about the Batcave. And then I think Batman tells him pretty much that he's supposed to stay there. This is where he's going to be. And, of course, before the end of the night, Damian escapes. I think he escapes in the morning or something, and he's at Wayne Enterprises, and he explains that he figured out all these things that he shouldn't have figured out, you know, just if he was following the directions Batman gave him, which was to stay in the room that they gave him. So he explains that he was supposed to, everything that Batman has is one day going to be his. So he needs to get started on finding the guy who killed his grandfather. And, man, it's just weird, man. Like, as I try to recount all this stuff for you guys, I just realize how all over the place the writing is. It just, nothing feels natural. There's not a nice flow to it. It's exactly the problem I had when I was reading it in comic book form. So overall, I'm going to just wrap this up because it's not that complicated of a plot, but it's just not a good plot. So I'm going to give it to you guys. And if you guys think it's great, you know, whatever. I'm just telling you my perspective. Essentially, Deathstroke has kidnapped Kirk Langstrom to make an army of Man-Bat ninjas, or ninja Man-Bats. And he's using them to help him, you know, gain a foothold on, you know, various criminal activities and things that the League of Assassins would normally have been involved with. I'm pretty sure that's really it. And there was something having to do with the man, he had an underwater base that had something involving green stuff, which I'm assuming was the Lazarus Pit. I don't know why that took so long. But anyway, this all leads to this big fight. First you have Damian escapes a couple times from the Batcave. He goes out to find Ubu. He finds Ubu. He beats the shit out of Ubu. Then he's confronted by Nightwing. Nightwing and him have a fight. He beats the crap out of Nightwing, but he loses the fight. Then he comes back. He pretty much talks some shit to Batman. And then somehow Batman is like, here, have the Robin costume. No mention of Tim. No mention of, Stephanie. No mention of anyone else, any other Robin. You're just seeing a Robin suit, an old one. And even after Damian makes fun of the suit, then he's given the suit. It's like, really? It doesn't make any sense that this is the dynamic and how things go down. Anyway, they end up going to save Talia, who gets kidnapped by Deathstroke in a trap that he set for the League, the remaining members of the League of Assassins, which is just Talia and a couple nameless ninjas. And so they go to his underwater base, and there's this big battle between Damian and Deathstroke. Damian wins, of course, after Deathstroke breaks his arm, slams him around a couple times, cuts him a couple times, and Damian still just beats the shit out of him. He shrugs off having his little arm broken and everything, like it's nothing. And they made him a complete G, and I'm like, no 10-year-old, even if the 10-year-old was a complete psycho, once his arm breaks, he's gonna be like, oh shit, something's broken, it's not working the way it's supposed to work, oh my god, I'm going to die. It's not gonna be, I'm badass enough to sit there and continue fighting with a 200-pound dude or a 180-pound dude, and you weigh like 40 pounds soaking wet. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just outclassed. Unless you poison that motherfucker, or unless you were able to stab him in like pressure points or something, there is no way at all. Unless you had superpowers, there's no fucking way. And this is comic book logic I'm using. There's no fucking way a 10-year-old is gonna beat an adult. Unless he knew the fucking dim mock from Bloodsport, where you could just tap the outside of your head or your body or whatever and make your, innards explode. Unless you can do those things, you will not win this fight against a 100-and-something-pound man who also knows martial arts. And you definitely wouldn't win this fight against a metahuman. Definitely not against Deathstroke. Anyway, he wins. Batman saves Talia. The place is coming apart and exploding, and Nightwing comes and saves them as they jettison themselves out of an escape pod, or out of the base through an escape pod. And then they go back, and Batman tells Talia that his son should stay with him, and she kind of doesn't argue with him, and or at first she does, and then, you know, she asks Damian, and Damian is like, if that's your wish. And then she respects what, you know, Batman said and leaves her son with him, and then end of the story. It just was a lackluster version of this story, you know, like, it's already kind of a bad story because there's a lot of holes in it. You know, I always have felt, and I might have said it before on a previous video, but I've always felt like Batman would have been the guy who gets a freaking vasectomy so that he can't have kids, so that no one could use that against him. You know what I mean? You couldn't be in this business gallivanting, dealing with all these femme fatales, you know, and shit. If he didn't do it before he met Talia, you'd think he would have went home and been like, Alfred, I need to be alone for a couple minutes. And he would have done the vasectomy himself because he's so fucking crazy. He'd have been like, yep, okay, let me suture that, cauterize that, all right, I'm done. And Batman, you know, would have been good, and he'd be going around having relations, but he won't be leaving no seeds around. But somehow he still just was like, you know, and it's weird because, you know, a lot of fanboys always have these stupid arguments about what would happen if Lois Lane and Superman had sex, as if Superman has to do everything the way a human being does it, right? You think about that, but you don't think about the fact that if Batman had a kid with a random chick, it's like the ultimate downfall of Batman could be like a Maury episode. Like, he is the father, and DNA says that Bruce Wayne is the father of this child. Yeah, he was wearing a Batman suit when he was humping me. Bruce Wayne is Batman. I mean, it'd be the end of Bruce Wayne and Batman. But, like, nobody ever mentions this shit. They were like, yeah, the story's awesome. The story sucks. I'm sorry. It's just not that plausible. And then the Man-Bat ninjas, when I was reading the comic, I was like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. Man-Bat was interesting because he's one of a kind. Maybe two of a kind. But for you to make a bunch of ninjas that are, you know, with the Man-Bat motif, that's kind of cheesy, you know? Even for comics, that's cheesy. You know what I mean? And it's a Batman story, so of course it couldn't be wrong. And on top of it, it was written by Grant Morrisson, so it definitely couldn't be wrong. Like, come on, guys. You're giving too much credit where it's not due. And then on the flip side, when we're talking about DC animation, Warner Brothers animation, they should have definitely taken the opportunity to, you know, kind of trim the fat on this story. Take out all the shit that's implausible and all the shit that just, it was there to make the story last longer. And, you know, call it a day. Insert some type of intelligence into the story so we could be like, oh, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like say that, you know, Damian was trained in only killing arts, so that instead of having a 5-minute fight scene with him and Ubu, he hit Ubu 3 times. I mean, it took a while. He's dodging, then hits him in the throat. Dodge, hits him in somewhere in between his rib cage. You know, dodge, takes out one of his vertebrae. Then you'd be like, oh, I get it. That's why he was able to kill the guy. That's why he was able to beat that guy. That's why Batman says don't fight, you can't kill, because that's all he knows how to do. He's retraining the boy. But no. Instead, you just made him awesome just for the sake of being awesome. If you guys remember back in the day, Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, when Damian Scott was drawing it, that was one of the best comic books out there. Not only because it had an original style, but the way that they dealt with having this character that was trained to kill by another assassin, and the way that she could see your moves before you did them, so she could intercept you in the middle of your attack, and that's why she always won. It was awesome to see how that worked. And she was trained as a child, like from as soon as she can walk, kind of like what I'm about to do with my son. As soon as they could walk, they were being trained. And she was being trained to kill from a young age. There was videotape that David Kane had of Batgirl killing people, of Cassandra Cain killing people, because he set it up so that she could do so. And this is what she was doing all the way into her teens, you know, maybe her early 20s. I'm assuming she was about 20. That made sense. They explained to you that she was a raised killer. They turned her into a killer from a very young age. With Damien, they never showed you what he was capable of until something happened that was the bulk of the story. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was no, what's the word? They didn't ease you into it, you know? It wasn't God, I'm so kind of annoyed that my brain is just like, yeah, just stop talking about this shit. But, you know, they didn't ease you into the plot and ease you into the details of the character. They just said, hey, look, this kid is Batman's son. He can kill everybody. There it is. It's the goddamn Batman's son. Like, come on. Is that really all we need now as an excuse for why things work the way they work? You know, like I said, I'm a huge DC fan. I used to be a huge Batman fan. You know, my Batman fandom, or my love of Batman, it stopped when Justice League Unlimited went off the air. Matter of fact, it stopped when Bruce Timm stopped doing all these animations. So I can go backwards and be like, man, I appreciate the hell out of Batman, but like recent times, he's become a meme. He's become just an unbeatable character, and then everything related to him is just automatically cool because it's Batman. And in a lot of cases, there's corny stuff that's related to Batman. There's illogical shit that's related to Batman, who should be the most logical of characters, and he should be handled with the most logic. So this movie is a pass. I didn't pay money to see it. I saw it at a friend's, and we were both talking about this stuff too. We were like, man, is it really necessary for them to really dumb down something that would have actually been better if they made it a little bit more complicated? I mean, it was definitely meant for older audiences. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of themes, you know, mature themes and stuff. And, you know, you're supposed to be like, okay, like Ubu going into his room with two hookers. Little kids aren't going to be like, hey, those girls are pretty. No, they're going to be like, why does she want to take off her clothes? Ubu tells the girl to take her clothes off in here. And she's like, well, if you want me to take anything off, I'm going to have to close these blinds. You're like, yeah, they're about to get down. But, you know, little kids shouldn't be watching that kind of shit. You know what I mean? And I know there's going to be some asshole in the comments that's going to be like, yeah, I was having sex when I was a little kid. Like, we're not even going to talk about this. But, you know, there's just a lot of weird, it wasn't well thought out, as just plain and simple. It seems like a lot of it made more sense in comic book form, and it lost all of that in the film form, in animated film form. And it's sad. I wish that the teams that made, you know, Crisis on Two Earths, or Under the Red Hood, or Wonder Woman, or you know, Justice League The New Frontier, or, you know, any of those old movies, even the Dark Knight Returns 1 and 2, we need that kind of complexity in these kind of stories. You can't just give us the story with the character, or maybe you can, because I know a lot of people still just love Damien, and I haven't really looked at any of the reviews besides Ryasuke's, because he's a homeboy of mine, but I'm assuming if this is the same world that we live in, that 95% of the reviews are going to be that the movie is awesome, because Damien is in it, it's animated, that's it, and it's Batman related. But if you really look at what's going on, there's no, it's a very inconsistent story, because characters were taken way out of their context. They pulled elements from other movies that did, or other stories that did the same things way better, but they chose to dumb it down. They didn't respect the source material enough to, like, try to make us, the viewers, and, you know, the audience, make us understand why this should work. You know, Damien came off as an asshole. He was a very small asshole. And it was frustrating that, like, I know a lot of people that dig the character, and I still don't get it. He's a very pompous asshole of a character. It gets frustrating after a couple, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour of hearing this kid talk. Because you're like, what the fuck? Like, you don't have shit. All you can do is kill people. Go out on the street and go kill people and see what happens. Eventually, you're going to come across the one guy that's going to beat your ass. That's why he's dead now, right? The attitude didn't match the job. And I'm surprised that the Batman in that world was like, hey, I'm going to train him and turn him into a Robin. No, the best thing you could do is to send him back to the fucking League of Assassins and let him grow up in that life, because in that life, he's killing from the shadows. He's doing everything behind the scenes because he's an assassin. In this life, he's an icon. He's in the public eye. Everybody will see him. He'll do things, and it will be under the microscope by others that are in the public eye, like the Justice League. So it just seems really ill-conceived that Batman's son would be a killer, and the League would be like, hey, yeah, it's good that you got that little boy a Robin costume and you made him Robin. Superman would be slapping Batman all over the place like, the fuck is wrong with you? That kid kills people. And when he doesn't kill him, he comes really close. Take the costume off that kid and send his ass back wherever he came from. You know, or put him in the fucking Phantom Zone. You know what I mean? Like, or we need to have Jean rearrange his memories or something so that he's a peaceful child. Because it just doesn't make sense, you know? It's one of the most ill-conceived stories that we've had for Batman in a long time. It was back then, and I still think it is now, you know? And then the fact that he nudged Tim out the way, that's my personal bias right there. Tim was the best Robin, in my opinion. He was the first Robin that got his own series. He was the first Robin to figure out the whole Batman Bruce Wayne thing on his own. And he wasn't an asshole, you know? He understood the logic of Batman. And it was a good way to explain that logic to us as viewers. And many of us were pretty young, you know? But, I don't know. So if you just like Damian Wayne and you just want to see him in animation and you want to see a kid kill adults and beat the shit out of adults and stuff, watch the movie. You'll love it because he kills and he beats the shit out of all the adults he fights, just about. If you want your movies to be a little bit more than what the comics were, or be you know, a good bridge between the comics and, you know, film, you're going to be disappointed because, you know, just on a basic fundamental storytelling level, it's lacking. It's so lacking. It's horribly lacking. Animation wise, the animation is all right. There's a couple scenes where they really went off. It's all towards the end, but like overall the movie is not really that, I don't know. I can't give it a big, you know, a bunch of props. I mean, I spent almost 40 minutes trying to explain all these things to you guys, and it's because so much was done wrong. So, yeah, I'd say this is a pass. If you watch this one while you're taking a shit, listen to it in the background while you take a shit, because you're not going to miss anything. If you like I said, if you like Damian and you have to love everything Batman, then watch it. You might enjoy it. Anyway, I'm Strident. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's been my review of Son of Batman, and I will catch you on the next review.